Activating human potential. We have a greater potential than we are allowing ourselves to exist in. And this is how we activate it, using body, mind, and spirit, using your tools, voice, imagination, creativity, command prayer, questions, investigations, receiving activation. In these videos, I inspire you to explore your own investigations, solutions, and techniques, body, mind, and spirit, training you to actively create our new earth. What you speak, think, do, eat, grow, listen to, watch, feel, touch, appreciate becomes our future earth. We have the potential within us to create anything using our God-given body, mind, and spirit, using our imagination in a receptive state. Welcome to your next adventure. I'm quickly popping on because I feel I need to finally do an investigation, because I keep hearing contradictory stories about this. It's slightly driving my mind. Bonkers is too much, but the contradictions are really difficult. Putin, right? A lot of people say he's a clone. A lot of people say, does that matter? A lot of people say he's a dark hat. A lot of people say he's a white hat. A lot of people say he's a good human, good for his country. A lot of people say he's a terrible, dastardly, disgusting one. Well, we have to sometimes take a stand. I remember this. My rather brilliant professor of architecture at Heriot-Watt University settled in the Edinburgh College of Art. That's where his office was, actually in the Grassmarket in Edinburgh, beautiful place for an office. And he was the one I did my PhD with. And he said to me, you have to take a stand. Because I said, well, all these different views are valid. And he said, you have to take a stand. Sometimes you have to take a stand. So let's see if we can find out some information about Putin. I'm going to count down from 10 to 0 and then see what I can find. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 now. So I'm using my device of a book. I like to have this great big leather-bound book and things appear in it. So before I open it, actually, President Putin of Russia, I want information about him. Son of a carpenter? No. A family who's reigned a long time in oligarchies in Russia. Is this the original Putin? Let's just look for this first. Yeah, the cloned apparatus is more valid for this. But as we know, there are many doubles, there are many clones. The original Putin, the President Putin, does he still live on the planet, on Earth? You could sort of say that it's true. So the version of Putin we're seeing, is this real Putin, or at least linked to Putin's soul? Yes, he is linked to Putin's soul. Okay. Now, let's get some information about his intentions. So there are plenty of different opinions. Let's see if we can find something. Okay, I'm going to come from an interesting standpoint. Anastasia. Some of you will know her books. The one she inspired Vladimir Megre, who's an industrialist, to write years ago, called the Ringing, they called the Ringing Cedars. Ringing Cedars, yeah. Written back in the 90s. And she was talking about living in harmony with nature and with ourselves and what we truly are as human beings. And that she was so clean that she was able to be very powerful as a being. And so it was all her experience of nature and being herself, and also how she inspired others to
work with the land in different ways, to work with children and education in different ways, to value craftsmanship, all these sort of aspects of life. I'm going to see what she thinks of him. I would like to talk to you, Anastasia, and talk to you about Putin. Is it possible to talk to you, Anastasia? There is a permission required. If I come from a place of peace and good quality vibration, will you talk to me, Anastasia? Yes, if we come from a place of musical quality. Yes, thank you. Putin, tell me about him, what you know about him. Founding father figure of Russia again, a little like an old-fashioned Tsar. Sees himself as a father to his people, puppeted as well. Who is he puppeted by, Anastasia? Are you aware of this? The dark and light forces playing puppets with all our figureheads on the planet. She shows me the marionettes. Could we say that there is a direction that Putin takes that we can say he's either good or he's bad? Is this possible to in any way show this? Good and bad for who? For what? For many reasons. He's seen as good by some and bad by others, as all people. There is a general prosperity tendency around him, and that is celebrated by many. However, there is also a harshness to him, and that is feared by many. This still sacrificing for military is embedded in our society. I wish we had it not. So the ruthlessness of him, yes, that's true. Anastasia, what good can you say of this man? Can you list some qualities which are good, we would consider good? Is mastery at conglomeration, collecting together the resources of the neighboring countries back into an idea of alliance of an old-fashioned Soviet Union, without it being that harsh, hard one of the Soviet Union. He is pulling them in, drawing them in to Greater Russia, but there is no formal agreement. The Iron Hand means that he doesn't give in to the West. A united front, which can be useful. Anastasia, are you able to talk about his relationship to the Ukraine and what is happening there? The disciplinarian, moving in where he feels he is needed, surgically operating, pincer movements. Yes, and smash and grab, that is the part of the glory of old Russia. We cannot help it, for we are trained in fury as soldiers. Yes, sad as that may be, it is the way of our people for many eons. His mentality is that it is a necessary evil to go in and destroy certain places, to prevent massive other situations. What about, Anastasia, what could you say about the loss of life to both Russians and Ukrainians in this conflict? Regarding Putin, an analysis would show there is loss on both sides, death on both sides. It is a thing which happens in these theaters, as they're called. If it is threatening our lands, he will police them. Strict border control. The NATO issue is important to him. And the sacrifice of lives is considered a necessary. Anastasia, is he human, or is there something else with his genetics? What can you say about his genetic makeup, the nature of his mind, of his strategic power source? Is he a human? Is he a hybrid? What can you say about this? So you asked me about the cloning. Yes, there is an extra, I wouldn't necessarily call it a strand to the DNA. There is a certain modification here. He is one of those families tooled up and brought up for such extravagant feats of power. Ruthless is the word, yet protecting values. Now, Anastasia, I hear stories from some of my friends, and this is where it's interesting when it comes from people I love, when they talk about him as a terrorist, a terrible human, awful being. What can you say about that? Because we're trying to look at him in this, well, it's not objective, but fair manner. Tacit agreements with all his power mongers to hold things down as little as possible. The expenditure of life is something that I don't agree with, but it is still seen as something to be done. He would rather win the war than be defeated. Is that just a pride thing, or is there something more to it that we need to understand? For example, we hear, so on one hand, we hear terrible stories of the conditions of the Russian people and how they are stealing things from Ukraine to make themselves feel better at home. We're hearing that, from the same friend, that they were injected with terrible compounds of chemicals to make them into fierce, crazy warriors, but destroying their natural humanity. Those are terrible, terrible things to hear. We hear of children missing in the Ukraine. We hear of families being killed, whereas it should be soldier and soldier, surely. But so we hear these terrible conditions for the Russian soldiers and how it's a kind of miserable situation for them, but yet they're sent into this fight. What can you tell me about this? They are Putin's soldiers. He puts them where he wishes to put them. He is the oligarch. He believes he is herding them. He is holding them as the grandfather of the family, of the countries that he is ruling, looking over. So what about the conditions of these soldiers? So this story of, them taking toilets home, ceramic toilets home to Russia because they don't have them there. What does that say about Putin? It is a deeply classed society. Those who are voracious, who have an appetite for power, have made their way through it. The wolves. It is a country of wolves. Of course it is. Look at the landscape. So you have the wolves and you have the sheep and you have the shepherds. And you see Putin, he is the shepherd of the wolves. Or you could call him the chief wolf. He must bark them down and keep them in order. And better, a slightly better wolf than all of the other raging ones. It is a difficult situation in a place that has been formed of cold and difficulty. It makes people wild and terrorizing. The difficulties of the soldiers is a sadness I find hard to experience myself. They are the young pawns sent in for whatever reason. Some try to get out of it by being ill, mentally ill. They make up things psychosomatically and they keep away. It means their career chances are tricky later on. But they will do these things sometimes to get out of those conditions. And it is still very old-fashioned, the way these things are run. It is fairly brutal, the militaristic style. That is how they keep this wild, fierce Cossack nature in check. Anastasia, tell me anything more about Putin that is useful for us to understand his character and how we may view him and judge him, even. Putin is doing what he feels is best. His relationship to the West must be maintained in this manner, saying stop, no further. It is a globalist agenda of a different kind. He wishes to have an equal say in what is happening and not be overrun and overshod. The World Economic Forum is wanting its piece of the pie, and he wants to have an equal say, an equal standing in his area of the world. This is his way of saying stop and no. Doesn't mean he's kind or good, but he is saying stop and no. And this is, in general, good and useful as it gives some resistance. Anastasia, what else can you say about the Ukraine? Because my friend Oksana talks about it as a place of extraordinary people with some unique genetics and links to inner earth. And that's why she says there's massive destruction going on. And then we hear from other sources that there are horrendous abuses of humanity occurring and many bioweapons labs. We're told there are many, and my friend Oksana says there are many in many countries. So she is trying to lessen this. However, the alternative media talks very much about the darkness and the trafficking of children and adults What can you say about this situation? It is a dark mess. The goods are hidden behind the bads. The goods are manipulated by the bads. You hear one thing, you cannot trust it. In truth, it is these many layers. Nothing is simple here. How can it be with so many people, so many vying powers? Anastasia, what is the objective? Ultimately, where can these two countries go? Where are we in this new earth that we're creating? How can they move forward? So Oksana Buchanan talks about the inner earth relationship, and a new earth society should be coming through the genetic root of the Ukrainian race. And she is so in grief at the decimation going on there. And then we hear of these dastardly deeds buried and hidden in plain sight, nestled among it. In a way, it makes sense to my mind that you would hide the most evil within the most good, because how can you bomb the evil when you hurt the good? It makes it very hard to fight, and it makes the people of the world, such as Putin, have to be so very ruthless, cutting into the good in order to take out the bad. So both lots are hurt. It makes him appear like some monster. But he is trying to remove the dark, the bad, the very, very, and naturally goodnesses will be hurt, good people. What can you say about this? We are at this edge of strangeness where all manner of things are continuing. The darkness has always been so in ripples and waves, of course. There is a longing in the folk for peace. They don't know, like all the rest of the world, how far they have been duped. In their innocence and their purity, they have been duped even further. And yes, this cheek by jowl of darkness to them means that they suffer when the dark is being cleared out. They are tainted. The alternative media does not understand these complexities because the information is not available. So your friend Oksana Buchanan can bring forth this information. It is not that all of Ukraine is good. It is that there are many, many goodnesses, beautiful, extraordinary people. And next to it, there are little pockets of nasty darkness. This is the difficulty. Human life is not a simple thing. War is not a simple thing. Never has been, never will be. Thank you. Anything more to say about Putin? His relationship to the United States, of course, is full of friction. And it is understandable why his friendship with Mr. Trump would be so strong. As a different broker of a different kind of alliance, Mr. Trump stands for, of course, this world power, just a different kind to the Klaus Schwab world power. All in all, we are in a frequency transition. And Trump is leading that in a way that is different from the other power elements. He is under the guise, the rhomboid shape movement forward of overreaching power structure. But there is a different kind of essence. God, I need to talk about him now. Anastasia, please talk to me about Trump. You and I picked up this angelic sense of him. There is this high-level frequency to him. I've experienced it. Of course, you know, we have the traditional media, and we have then the understanding of his Jesuit upbringing, who his parents were. That's a little bit tricky. Who knows whether he was, so many rumors of whether he was adopted or not, but he certainly lived in a certain way, and he created this lifestyle and these riches. And in order to do that, the idea is that he would have had to go into their system and use it. And he does openly say that he did. That is a big plan for a soul. I always got the impression that his soul was of width and breadth that was beyond most humans' comprehension. What can you say of Mr. Trump? It is a different type of soul. He's come with this mission. It is a savior type mission. It is necessarily going to make people hate him and inspire people to love him. Such is the role of a savior. You are a martyr, a victim, and a savior at the same time. You are stirring the pot as you need to be. You are a figurehead, and you will be the figurehead between the forces of anger and not the outrage, and not always that direction. You have to be a very different kind of soul to take the buffeting which is thrown at you. You are a target. That is what you are. To come in and decide to be that kind of a soul in that kind of experience, you are large, and dancership is your mastery. There is a wisdom and a quietude within him. Truly, peace is his preferred method. You could say ruthless too, but it is a different kind of ruthlessness. There is compassion in the man. There is compassion in the man. How did he get his fortunes? Yes, he played the dice of that game. He watched all of those pathways taken by those people making those decisions in those kind of lives. He fooled many of them. That was his aim. He came as this player, this multidimensional player, sure to be hated by so very many, and then built up as a savior. An almost impossible position, of course, to hold if you are but a normal human. He is an expanded being and mind. He is not unkind. He is good. It is important to understand he operates on levels that most humans never, ever occupy. You cannot judge him as a normal human, for he is not. You cannot actually judge him because your mind would have to be as open and wide and broad and deep as his in order to judge him. You can witness him and observe him, question him and speak to him, but you cannot judge him. There are not many beings of his caliber on the planet. He had to be a match for the ones who had let themselves fall deeply, but a match on the other side of the game. Focus is his most extraordinary skill. Focus within a hurricane. The storm is upon us is not a joke. His clarity. It is not easy to hear one note in an orchestra. Thank you. I will leave it for now. Thank you very much. Anastasia? It was fun. Thank you. Hope that was interesting. Comments below. I want to see what you think because it's fascinating. It's always about the questions you ask, isn't it? This stuff is complicated. You have to just do what you can do in your life. Be what you can. Open yourself out as much as you can, as full as you can, as deep and wide and broad and high. That's your job. And then you include everything else going in as much as you can. But these kind of big beings you watch, you observe, and you add what you have to the mix. This is the life we have. Happy inputting.